Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast. I am your host, Justin Soderberg. We're back for another episode with Gibran Graham from Briar Patch Bookstore. We're talking Rogue One, a Star Wars story, as we get ready for today's drop of Andor, the series on Disney+. We talked Rogue One, how much we liked it, didn't like it, all the fun things about Rogue One, and then we also talked a brief moment about Andor. Before you listen to the episode, though, check us out on Facebook and Instagram, as well as Twitter. Follow us, Capes and Tights, on there. Visit our website, capesandtights.com. We're all kinds of content on there between articles, posts, videos, podcast episodes, and so much more, capesandtights.com. But yeah, this is our episode, a Rogue One, a Star Wars story, a review and discussion, as well as a preview for Andor coming here on Disney+. Enjoy, everybody. Welcome to the Capes and Tights podcast there, Jerron. How are you, man?
Hey, great.
That's awesome. I'm glad. I'm really glad. I mean, I haven't seen you in a while. I mean, physically haven't seen you in a little while, but I also haven't seen you on the podcast in a while. How have you been since the last time I saw you? Anything crazy happen or?
Well, got COVID, got better, watch the world be on fire.
I did too. It was the funniest thing. So our anniversary is in August, or my wedding anniversary. And we decided that we were actually, okay, let's take a trip to New York City. It was planned way in advance. And we're like, we're the smart enough people to like wear masks when we go to places and so on. And like, if we were on a back street and we had a few minutes between seeing another person, we'd take it off, breathe a little bit, and so on. And we had a great time. We felt really like we were safe and all that stuff. And Friday morning when I was in New York City, we woke up and we were just like, don't feel that right. And we brought tests to make sure. My son was at my father and mother's house in Connecticut, so I was like, we want to make sure before we go back and so on and so forth. And sure enough, we tested positive. Then my mom texted me like immediately after saying my son had a fever. So I was like, let's see here. There's no possible way that we caught this in New York City because, I mean, it was possible the first day there we caught it, and that like the 4 or 5 days later happened to be when we tested positive. But my son's in another state, so that doesn't really make any sense. So we chalked it up to the fact that we had swim lessons on the Saturday before we left in the morning, and this possibility that someone there had given us a little gift for our vacation.
But swim lessons get you every time.
Exactly, right? I even said to my wife too, I was like, we're leaving for New York City today. His swim lesson's at 8:30. We can get on the road at 8:30. She's like, no, it's his last one. And I was like, God, see, if we just would have skipped swim lessons, we might have been fine. But hey, you know what? I say 2.5, 3 years into this whole thing, we did everything we could, and it just ended up catching up to us. Like I said, it's caught up to us because, like, what are you expecting? Like, I say caught up to us. Most people who use the word caught up to us stop wearing a mask in like the end of 2020. So catching up to you is not really the thing. You caught up to it. Let's be honest here.
Right. But, well, I'm lucky it was pretty mild. So, I mean, the worst part of it was having, the quarantine and being a small business owner that was sort of, super inconveniencing, but, doing the right thing, of course, and doing some extended masking after that. And, so, I mean, I hate to be out of commission, but, got a lot of comic reading and TV watching done. So
it was funny because we thought the same thing. And then we realized that we have a 16-month-old son that only wanted to watch Cars 1, Cars 2, and Cars 3. So I have now seen those movies about 60 times each, and didn't get any really caught up on any TV shows or anything like that while we were out. But he did pretty well too. He was 2 days of pretty bad, like just high fever and just not feeling good. But after that, he was pretty good. But I don't recommend anybody getting sick and taking care of a sick kid. It's not the funnest thing in the world.
No.
But we're here to talk about fake things like Star Wars and things that don't really exist in the world to get our minds away from the BS that happens in this world. But yeah, so Adam's off for a while, just really, really overwhelmed with work, which is great. So awesome for Adam. He's got a nice job. He can, pay the bills with, but he had to step away for a little while. So I immediately, the day he told me that, I was like, Gibran, you want to join us? And Paul Eaton from Galactic Comics will also join us for some episodes. And I have some cool guests coming up. We're actually going to talk to the guy who directed or created the It Pennywise It documentary next week, so that'd be pretty cool. Let's jump on that. His name's John. But today we're going to talk Star Wars Rogue One, a Star Wars story is technically the name of it.
You got to get it right.
You got to get the Star Wars name in there, or no one's going to know it's a Star Wars movie, right? It came out in 2016, which it seems like it was longer ago than that. I felt like it came out like early 2000s, but no, it's only, or 2016, just almost 2017. So December 16th of 2016. It was the second. So, like I say, solo. I hate the fact that there's a movie called Solo, which is a solo movie of Star Wars, not part of the, was it the trilogies, the 3 trilogies that were there. It was the second of the solo movies, and it did $1 billion, Gibran, like $1 billion.
A lot.
And it's funny. So as we get into this, we'll talk a little bit about everything. We'll just shoot, back and forth, just how we felt about the movie and things we liked, things we didn't like, and so on. It's sad that they basically abandoned the solo style spin-off movies solely. I say solely again, because of the movie Solo. Really, that was the one they were like, we're not going to do this anymore. But this one was so successful. Like I really wish they would have done it. I guess we get it with the TV shows now. I guess we get that taste of it. But I really like this movie overall. Like, I do think that there's a lot of big, humongous, cool Star Wars-esque things in this movie that they're people shouldn't sleep on. And it's pretty sad, again, like I said, after Solo and then this one, that they decided not to do really anymore, or at least for the immediate future, wasn't allowed to do any more solo style films, spin-off films.
Right. I mean, obviously there had been rumors about a Kenobi film, and that, made its way into a television series. Thank goodness. I think it was a great, show. Mm-hmm. And I just heard, I think the Rogue Squadron movie has been, temporarily,
what's the official word? Removed from the release calendar.
Right. I actually saw somewhere they referred to it as was put in the sand crawler.
There you go.
So, where I guess all things go to almost die.
Yes.
I mean, I love Rogue One. It was, it was just the right amount of fan service to those of us that, always wanted some kind of story or whatnot. I mean, there's lots put in there, lots of little Easter eggs and characters and bits, and the quintessential lines that carry through all the Star Wars movies, but not in a way that was forced. Like it was just done well. And it was a lot of fun. It was a very different movie than any of the saga movies, and rightly so. No screen crawl at the beginning, setting it apart, and just a very different feel to the movie. It was a war movie. It was a revolution movie, and I think the filmmakers did a really good job of conveying that in the Star Wars universe.
I laugh how you say it's a war movie too. Not laugh, but it's one of the things when someone asks me about the movie, I'm always like, it seems like there was more war in this movie than any of the other Star Wars movies have had. And it was just kind of like, it wasn't even technically, like I said, it was a Star Wars story, but didn't have that Star Wars : something else. And it's had a little bit more war in it than other movies. And it's a little more ground battles, I would think too, that, we're space trilogy or space saga movies. They having a little bit more ground battles was really cool in this. And you mentioned the no crawl. I actually wrote that on mine as well. There's no crawl on it, which is cool because, like I said, it sets it apart. And the TV shows didn't do it either, which is nice. It's like, if you're going to be part of those big overarching story main films, then you get the crawl. If you're not, then it becomes that you don't. You just get normal credits, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
You said it. It's cool because it does feel different, but they were able to make it close enough that you felt like, okay, this is a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
But you knew it wasn't part of the three movie segments. Get freaking fly in here somewhere. But you could see that they created it a little better. I will say the cinematography was amazing because they weren't really able to do a lot of lighting effect things in the original movies because obviously lighting techniques were a little bit older. And this with the special effects, I mean, technically, if you were to film a spaceship from that far away, which you'd have to get the whole spaceship is, you wouldn't be able to see the spaceship because there's not enough light in space for you to see the spaceship. But the shadows and the angles and all that stuff and the different shots they had there made me feel like I was in space. And I really liked how well, I forget his name, Greg Fraser, but it's Greig. Greg Greg Fraser is a cinematographer on this movie, but I thought it was really well shot. That's what I was saying. Like that, it reminded me of a Star Wars movie, but also made me go, okay, there isn't Luke Skywalker in this movie, which is nice.
Right. Another interesting cinematography, or more, I guess, an editing feature of this film is that it doesn't have the swipes that all the saga movies have as well, which also kind of lends itself to feeling a little bit different in how the scene changes happen and that kind of thing.
Well, in the more recent Star Wars movies, they almost looks like they tried too hard to make it the original films, where it was something that this one again was, we're trying to make it slightly different. So we don't have to do certain things like the slides or the crawl. We don't have to do those things. You don't have to pigeonhole yourself into a specific way of shooting a movie. We need to make it look like it's in this universe, but it doesn't have to be the exact same copy blueprint of the future movies before that. And we saw that with Solo. I forget there for a second that the last time we talked together probably was Solo, and that was the other Solo individual spin-off film that we had, the Star Wars universe. I guess that's what we're going to do now. We're just going to call you on for all these individual Star Wars.
Except that was the last one, so great.
Exactly. We're done. There you go. That's it. You're done. And the same with the music. Like Michael Giacchino did a great job with the music, to the point where he didn't try to be John Williams, but made it John Williams-esque. So you had that music feel of a Star Wars movie, but again, wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna just duplicate what John Williams does and twist it a little bit and make it my own. Michael Giacchino is unbelievable. He was the Spider-Man movies. He's also the director of the upcoming Werewolf by Night special presentation on Disney Plus. He is the co-director of that film, which is pretty cool. I'm excited for that. But yeah, the music also felt, like I said, different enough, but close enough to be like, okay, I'm immersed in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I mean, he really, he pulled certain notes, well, no pun intended, but of what made the John Williams scores, so popular. It had the right, just sort of pieces of theme and that kind of thing. And if I remember correctly, I believe that there was something I read where he had tried to pull from some of the same source material that Williams had pulled from for inspiration. And I think that really shows, because it has that feel while not copying, exactly what, Williams had done. And I think that's great. And it's funny because it's, that sort of painstaking detail to the creation of just the score is also what was done with just the rest of the filmmaking of the movie too. I mean, I think it was, one of, I don't know, just maybe at the time, it was one of the top 20 most expensive movies ever made, or something like that. Because there's a lot of money. I mean, I think of the guy who did the rewrites, or something, got like $5 million. I mean, whew. So, but they really tried to, capture the feel of, the first Star Wars movie by, not having so much gratuitous, special effects that are modern, and try to recreate some of what they had to do at that time in the late 70s, and I think that was really, really cool that they did that, just to really make sure that it felt like it was that time frame, because you couldn't have, so much digital. I mean, we'll get to some other digital stuff later, but so much, digital effects that, would make it seem like it didn't fit, as the prequel that it actually is, happening like a week before or whatever it is, A New Hope, without, doing that. And I think that's really great. It was down to like, I mean, they're, the Rebel base, in A New Hope, they had, just the way that they had done the matte paintings and stuff in the background. They didn't really have all those fighters. They didn't recreate them digitally at that time. But they made cardboard cutouts for this movie, for the background of those ships and the base, and that's like, wow. Like, I mean, that's so that's so old school. That's so DIY. But I mean, it works because you feel like you are in that same place.
Well, it's cool. So I feel like when the Star Wars, when you first of all, when they hire you, anybody, an actor, cinematographer, a grip, anybody on this movie, you're like, I'm working on a Star Wars movie. This is badass. Like this is unbelievable, dream come true kind of scenario. And then to be able to try to like pay homage to the original movies by doing some of the older techniques, but also say, well, we are not in the 80s. We can do 70s and 80s. We can do things with computers that we weren't able to do back in the day, including now I'm forgetting who it was. It was completely special effects because he died. Not Krennic, but the other I can't think of his name now. There was an entire special effects of a dude. What was his name? This is gonna be bad because like we're supposed to know what I'm talking about here, aren't I? Whatever. But there was just discussion about how you could have recast someone as someone, and you decided to do some completely special effects. So there's a little bit of both on that side of it. Like went a little bit too far, and then also I said like I hate to say it. My wife's 10 years younger than me. Actually, today, as we were recording this, is her birthday, and she is definitely one of those people who looks at me and goes, "Oh, that movie was made in such and such a year," and if it's made before 2000, she's not really into watching it just because it seems like a movie that was made before 2000. And so there are a small segment of people out there who see the older, more practical effects as a downside, but I see it more of a you used your mind, you used your abilities to make something that looked more real. We talk about it all the time with the TMNT movies. Those costumes don't look real, but they look more real to me than a CGI, the Michael Bay CGI versions of the turtles. Like the CGI turtles look like computer graphics. At least the turtles look like really crappy, weird looking turtles. Like it doesn't look, they look real at least.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. There's for a fact when you're watching the turtles from Michael Bay's movie, you're like, they're talking to a guy in a suit that's a green suit that's not even there. And so, so practical effects have always been me. Like if you can do it right, like it doesn't look janky, then awesome. Let's do it that way. And I'm glad they were able to do that with this movie with a, like I said, a good mixture of both.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting, we talk about, green screen and effects or whatever, the Alan Tudyk, when he was the droid character,
K2SO.
Yeah. I guess there was a comment from Anthony Daniels, who played C3PO, who had said something along the lines of, this guy, what is he doing? I had to be inside an outfit in this hot, C3PO outfit for all my movies, and this guy just gets to do motion capture.
Yes, exactly. I actually started reading C3PO's book a while back. I was really listening to the audiobook, actually, honestly, in the car. And I forget what it was. I think it might have been right before we went on vacation. So I was in the car with my wife, and she's like, I don't want to listen to an audiobook of C3PO. So we ended up changing it to something else. And then I got put in the back seat because I just actually read Nick Offerman's book, Paddle Your Own Canoe, which was excellent. But I'm really a big fan now of audiobooks now. Speaking of books that are read by the author, it's amazing. I listened to Kevin Smith's one and Nick Offerman's book, and they're both read by the people who wrote the book and the people. And it's like, it's so great to hear that come from the voice of the person who wrote it. It's really awesome. It was Grand Moff Tarkin, who I was talking about, so there's Tarkin in this movie who passed away. And so they could have gotten another like this. Honestly, Mads Mikkelsen probably could have played Grand Moff Tarkin and looked similar enough to him. But they used facial likeness on that. And I was listening to someone talk about it, about how we as human beings would rather see like a droid be all CGI than practical effects, than actual someone who looks so much like the original person, like what they've been doing in Boba Fett with Luke Skywalker, Mandalorian, stuff like that with Luke Skywalker and all that stuff. It's like, there's a point where it almost looks dead in the eyes. Whereas like, seeing a droid, you're like, I know they're fake. It's fine. They're not an actual thing. Whereas a human being, you're like, there's something about our bodies our minds who don't connect on a level of, we know that's a fake person, no matter how realistic it looks. And they're just that was a one point where I was like, oh, cool. I'm glad they were able to do that because obviously he died, and this is a prequel to the movie that he was in. So that's like you need to have him in this movie. But I guess they could have recast him, and I would have been happy with that. But I don't think a lot of people understood that he was actually fake. So
Yeah, right. I mean, if you're not familiar with the characters, or you don't
Yeah.
know Peter Cushing, you don't know that he's not alive anymore. You could walk into that. I mean, I honestly thought that Tarkin was done fairly well. I mean,
yes,
I bought into it. I mean, I knew that he wasn't alive, but I was like, they're doing a really good job with this.
no, they filmed the parts before the original movie and just left
Right.
him on the back. So one of these days we'll make this movie. We'll use this character in it. And
Right. Honestly, I didn't know. I think going into the movie the first time when I saw it in the theater, I didn't know that they had done such CGI on that character. So when the person that is physically playing Tarkin in that movie, I actually was thinking, wow, looks just like him. And then to know that there was obviously some digital stuff that happened. I do think it was a better recreation than Leia at the end of the movie. Sorry, spoilers. What is interesting too is that the person that plays in place of Peter Cushing has actually played other characters that a character that Peter Cushing had played previous as well, and had used had basically modeled himself after Cushing's portrayal of a character in another movie. It was a Sherlock Holmes movie. But I think that was interesting that happened, and it was totally done with the Cushing's estate being okay with it. And so that's pretty cool. I mean, I can't imagine having recreated your loved one in a movie and being like, we're not okay with this.
Yes, this is not good. No.
So that's good.
but to me, that's the whole discussion that came up after Luke Skywalker's appearance in the TV shows was like, at what point do we stop doing that? And that's that could be an entire conversation for another podcast about like, at what point do you start signing on deals for like the MCU, for example? And you're like, okay, Tony Stark, you're on it, but you're on it for 15 years, whether you pass away or not. This whole Black Panther 2 coming up, like they could have just motion captured and CGI likeness of Chadwick Boseman in Black Panther 2, even for a small part at the beginning to quote unquote kill him off on the movie or whatever you want to do. And at what point do we draw the line? Like, is there a state that makes the decision on that? Like on these ones there are, but like, I can't, like 10, 15 years from now, do you think that someone signs on to do a movie and it's like, well, we're going to make the sequel, whether you want to do it or not. So we're going to use special effects. If you decide not to sign up, you're signing a contract now for the sequel too,
right?
Yeah, like it's weird how we're gonna get to that point, and I think that there is a line where I'm like, like you talk about special effects in general. I'm like, at some point you want real people playing the people, like come on, like we need to have that. But I guess we've had other people play other characters in Star Wars before, like James Earl Jones doing the voice of Darth Vader and someone else actually playing him. Right. So it's not, I guess it's not that much different than that, but I don't know, the likeness thing, you're right. We're going to start, if the person passes away, you're going to start doing a likeness, CGI into your vacations. I went on vacation with my husband and it's just someone filling in, you just likeness over it. Is that what you're going to do? But I mean, speaking of Darth Vader, it might be, I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but it might be the best portrayal of Darth Vader's badassness in this movie. His entering that hallway and just destroying people was like, that's the Darth Vader that we all want for the villain, because he just kicked ass. Downside though, Gibran, why wasn't Darth Vader or Palpatine more present in this movie? Like, why weren't they, like, you telling me that Darth Vader or Palpatine weren't like influential on this building of the Star or the Death Star more than they actually were? Like, it seemed like a bunch of group of people made the Death Star and then we're like, oh, by the way, it's done, Darth Vader and Palpatine, like, here you go. Whereas like, it seems like they would have been more involved in this whole process and we would have seen them more. And I don't know if that's because they didn't want to take away from what the original trilogy had with Darth Vader in it. Like, they didn't want to like pull away from that and they just had him become Darth Vader in the original or the sequel trilogy, and you really want to get your Darth Vader in the original trilogy, maybe we shouldn't focus as much on him in this movie. But I don't know, I just feel like I wish there was more.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, it might have been some kind of, just there's a certain buildup, right,
Mhm.
of the original trilogy as far as the Emperor's presence goes. I mean, you see him on, a video screen in Vader's chamber in Empire, and you don't really see him in person
Mm.
until he gets onto the second Death Star. And but that's the thing too, right? I mean, Emperor, he was not present on the first Death Star.
Mhm.
Um, probably good because, well, I mean, maybe bad because he probably would have died on that one
Yes,
too.
exactly.
So, but or not died,
Yeah.
as the case may be. J.J. Abrams. But it could just be sort of owing itself to that sort of build up. I mean, there's some comments from Tarkin and others, I think, about how like they're really trying to keep, or even Vader's comments
Mhm.
to Krennic, when he visits him, about how the Senate needs to not know about this. We need to hide what happened with
Yes.
Jeddah, and that kind of thing. And um, I think that is probably pretty important. I mean, because honestly, how do you hide this
Yeah.
moon-sized destructive satellite, that apparently, according to this movie, can travel through hyperspace? We
Yes.
don't actually see that happen, but
No.
it apparently happens. And if so, why couldn't they get to the moon base of Yavin a little
Yeah.
faster? But yeah, so I think that you do want more, definitely. But you don't want it to be a Vader movie, right?
Yes.
You want it to be something else. And we get, I think, just that right amount of Vader, and Vader too. His physical appearance is so akin to his physical appearance in A New Hope as well.
Mhm.
He does his breastplate isn't showing. He's got the red tint to the eyes.
Yeah.
That element is present, and I think that since those films are chronologically happen so close to each other, it's good that they kept that sort of look and feel to it.
I will say the benefit some people get if they watch it in chronological order from episode 1 on is that you get your almost first big battle. I mean, like obviously you have some stuff in episode 3 and stuff like that, but like I'm saying, like you had this badassness of him in this, like I said, his just slaughtering people. And then you go into A New Hope, which is pretty cool. So I do like that aspect of it. And there isn't too much in it. You mentioned that you want to be a Darth Vader movie. I liked Rogue One as it is, but I
Yeah.
still want a Darth Vader movie. I might be one in the few there, but I just definitely think that as a comic book fan as well, I love the fact that right now I get to read bounty hunters and Star Wars and Dr. Aphra and Darth Vader. And you go, like, you have all these offshoots and following individual characters. Darth Vader isn't always around Luke Skywalker. Like, there's other times he was doing other things. And I would love to see that. I mean, a TV show would be cool too, but like, bring people like, obviously we saw a little appearance of Darth Vader in the most recent show. Was it
Kenobi,
Obi-Wan
right?
Kenobi? Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, just I would love that presence of an actual Darth Vader show, 6-part miniseries. It's just literally like Darth Vader doing Darth Vader crap away from everybody else. I don't know.
Right.
I just think that's great. As I said, like the Star Wars, it can relate to Mandalorian and to to Obi-Wan's show and all that. So it can relate to all that stuff, but just be an offshoot of it would be awesome. Kind of like what Moon Knight was to the MCU, where it's like it
Yeah.
happens in the same universe, but it doesn't have to actually connect to the universe in a way that you're like, oh, Luke, Leia, like you can just do it separately. Like
Right.
it seems like we thought we were going to have that with all the TV shows. And all of a sudden I know where they're just like, oh, we got to throw the Skywalker in here somewhere,
Yeah,
which
right.
I
Exactly.
like.
Yeah.
But in the same sense, Adam and I have talked about that in the past. We're like, can we just get past the Skywalkers? There's so many more people in this universe, which
Right.
was nice because this one technically kind of did. It was very little Skywalker-esque in this movie because of the story. It's a story that I don't think when we watched the original movie, we were like, how did they get the plans? Like, I don't
Right.
think we were like, we need to know this. But as time grew and you watched the movies over and over again, you read comic books and watched TV shows, it became one of those things that you're like, oh, that's really a cool idea to find out how they got the plans and how they actually thwarted the Death Star with Luke Skywalker going in there eventually and shooting.
And why
down
do the
his-
blueprints look like they were done on an Atari?
Yes,
So, right.
I do. I mean, so the idea behind it, I think they were able to do a good job um retroactively telling you how they, like, if you watch A New Hope and you watch these original trilogy and you see how they destroyed the Death Star and you're like, oh, there was this one fault. It's like, who didn't pick up on this one fault? Come to find out, it makes sense that someone planted the one fault, which is a great, like I said, retroactively going back there and being like, okay, this is how it happened, which is really cool. I do love that about this movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that that whole backstory and filling that out to, not to apologize or to excuse, the looseness of that plot line,
Yes.
but just to flesh it out, and give it this extra layer, I think was really interesting. I mean, having, Galen Erso, as this sort of, Oppenheimer character, like where, in real life, we've got the creation of the atomic bomb and everything else, and how that was something that, in our, real world history was something that Robert Oppenheimer just like always regretted what he had done. But I actually really loved how Erso, has made this decision that, well, they're going to do it without me.
Yes.
So if I am a part of it, I can kind of control it somehow. And he figures out what that thing is, to create that fault, right? I mean, it's a little complicated, in the creation of that fault. I mean, you got to do this and you got to go there and you got to, but obviously the end result of, putting a couple, torpedoes into that shaft, is all you needed to do. So take that, Empire.
Was, like I said, the looseness of the first of A New Hope in that aspect of telling that story, whereas they were able to like give you the reason. I think it's great because I think modern times, you make a movie, they make some sort of virus in the computer system that when after a certain period of time, the thing blows up anyway, and you don't know about it. And like having the ability to make it something that's completely different that you don't see in a lot of other films. I mean, you saw Independence Day, they went up to the thing, shot the, but like there is this cool part of the story that's a different way to take down the Death Star in a way that wasn't so obvious that he just did something wrong on the Death Star, so something would malfunction. You actually still had to go there and do something to it, which allowed it to have an entire movie basically for that. But no, it was really, I think that was cool. I mean, there's a bunch of good things in this movie, but there's just there is some feel that it's not perfect for sure. And I don't know sometimes what those are, but I just know that it's a movie that my wife says it's her favorite Star Wars movie, and she's not a huge Star Wars fan, so that helps. But like, it is up there for me. I think it's top 5 for sure, in my opinion, because we love Star Wars, and I'll watch them all over and over again. But there are some not so great ones.
Yeah. This lands at number 3 for me.
See, there you go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll never be able to get away from my love and for both Empire and A New Hope. But this is number 3 for me, definitely, before continuing on with the others. So, and maybe it's because it ties into all that. Maybe it's because it just this the I mean, damn, I'm gonna be 49 next month. So I come from an era where all I had was A New Hope for a while, and these are the only threads, these are the only characters that I could imagine or play toys with or whatever, and so, this era is definitely, this time frame for the Star Wars universe is definitely one that I just, gravitate to. I just love. And, I hear that a lot from people that this is their favorite, especially people that aren't like, diehard Star Wars fans, they just, they watch it. They're on the outskirts of fandom. They're married to someone like you, and this is the one that they hold on to.
They're forced to watch one. I'm like, if I have to force to watch one, I'll watch this one then.
Right, but because it is so different, it does have that different feel to it. There's a lot of real world, man on the ground, person on the ground, kind of perspective, and it's also tragic. I mean, as the New Hope scroll tells you, I mean, they just had this, the rebellion's first victory over the Empire, which was this, right? And but it's a victory, but it's as much a victory as any victories that we ever have in a war, right? I mean, people still die.
Yep.
There's still destruction. There's all sorts of, collateral damage, whether it's people that aren't in the war or whatever else is happening. And you get that. I mean, you see, that space battle, which is I think probably one of the best space battles,
Yeah.
in addition to all the great ground battles they had in this film, that you see people die. You've got destruction. Some of these ships don't last. You
Mhm.
see some of this Death Star, action where they're, basically, laying waste to things. And of course, spoilers, your main characters, do not survive.
Yes.
As great a victory this is, we lost these amazing characters, which are probably some of the best ones that have been in a Star Wars film.
Yeah, and that's just funny. So I was thinking as you were talking that I was like, it's hugely benefit that this movie was made 40 or 50 years after the original movie, 30, 40, whatever. How many years was it? It's 30, 40 years, 30 years, 40 years, 39 years after the
Right.
original
Yeah.
movie, that you couldn't really keep anybody. Like like if you had any, if you'd have to explain away why some of these people don't exist in A New Hope. Like you'd have to like it wouldn't lead up. So even if they said like a lot of people's lives die or like lost a lot of lives to get us these plans, someone still could have survived. Like it doesn't have to mean everybody had to die, but it was really, I think that was a benefit to this movie that people are too afraid to kill people off in things. Why I've given credit to Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead, those kind of TV shows where they're like, no, these are a fan favorite character. We're still going to kill them off because it improves the story. And I think that's one of the greatest things about this movie is you if you haven't seen the movie before and you go to watch it and you're like, oh, his characters are amazing. At the end, you're like, what the hell? They all die. And that's, I like that aspect of it because it makes it, I don't know, mean a little bit more. You care a little bit more for the characters because you now know after you've seen the movie once or twice that they're all not going to make it. So they're actually doing this for the betterment of the galaxy, which is really cool to see. And I think that's one of the benefits we get from having this be a prequel movie made 40 years after the movie that it leads into. And the fact that it literally leads into it. It's not like this movie happens in 2 years later. It's literally like the end of this movie is the beginning of the next movie, basically, which is really cool.
Yeah, when you have that Rebel blockade runner come out of the Rebel frigate, at the end, it's sort of detaching itself and going off. You're just like, yeah, right, like and then like just let's not stop. Let's pop in A New Hope. Let's just keep going.
It would be the most awesome season-ending cliffhanger for a TV show where you're just like, oh my god. No, it's true, and I give credit to. I mean, I love Forrest Whitaker. They weirdly felt like they didn't know what to do with the character, so they killed him off. Because I definitely think that in that part where they were getting on the ship, he could have gotten on the ship. He just didn't want to. He was just like, I'm already half robot anyway, so let's just go on without me. I don't.
Well, it's funny, like when Jin, she's like looking out the window of the ship at his fortress getting destroyed or whatever, and I'm right there with her, like looking like, is he getting out of there?
Yeah.
Like, did he make it? Like, I mean, and no, he didn't. Although we're gonna get a little bit more of him.
Yes.
Previous.
Yes. I mean, I love Forrest Whitaker. I think he's a great, fun, or like a unique actor. He's been in a couple of movies where I'm like, what the hell? But there's been some good movies with him, and I love Mads Mikkelsen, Alan Tudyk as C3, was it K2SO? Riz Ahmed, who's amazing. He was in Venom, obviously, and he was in Nightcrawler. I don't know if you've ever seen Nightcrawler. That was an amazing movie with Jake Gyllenhaal. And Felicity Jones, Diego Luna. We just talked about Ben Mendelsohn. Felicity Jones is the strong female lead role that I think they kind of fell off the boat with the sequel trilogy. I feel like they kept on saying we need this strong female role to be that, and everybody thought it was going to be Ray, but like I feel like the stronger person was Felicity in this movie than actually in the sequel trilogy. I think they tried to make a strong female role in the sequel trilogy and then ended up being like, nope. That director struggle between, that it really took its toll on a lot of things. But the funny thing is, I mean, how can you, Jin Erso is such a great character, but you can't exactly put him right in front of your kid and being like, hey, this is a role model. She dies. Yes. She's awesome. You're gonna love her. We are not gonna finish this movie though. We're turning it off before the end of the movie though. So you think that the person's still alive.
Yeah. Tell me about what you think happens to Jyn Erso next. Yes. What are the
Well,
continuing adventures?
in a
You know,
different multiverse, she's in
the
this movie
Star
as a
Wars
different person.
multiverse. Yeah, exactly. Maybe she comes back in the Star Wars Marvel, original Marvel comic universe.
There you go.
Somehow.
But yeah, you're right.
Uh,
You're actually right about that. But what I'm saying is like, I feel like they had done well with obviously a year prior to this is when Force Awakens came out, but like they obviously were filmed right around the same time. And it's one of those weird things that the original Iron Man movie and the Incredible Hulk were filmed right around the same time and they released months apart from each other. Yeah. But I feel like the Incredible Hulk would have been so much more successful if it would have been like a year or two later, because if they just like let Iron Man sit and be what it was for 2 years and then create the Incredible Hulk would have probably almost been as good as Iron Man, because they would have learned from the success of Iron Man that they could do certain things. And same thing with this. I feel like if Rogue One came out 2 or 3 years prior to Force Awakens, they might have been like, oh, we can actually do this with a strong female role. And actually, again, you're right. There was some struggles at the end there with the sequels because of directors and all that stuff. I think that's really where everything fell off. It wasn't specifically the fault of the actors or the story writers. It's a lot of this back and forth between who gets to make the decisions on things. That something that Marvel seems to have been successful at, because there's one guy saying, no, you can do this, and no, you can't do this. But some things have fallen off the boat a little bit there for Marvel, but we'll get into that too another time.
You can get a little bit more of Jyn Erso in prior to this, because there was I own the Briar Patch in downtown Bangor. It's a bookstore, so I guess, let me talk about books for a second. You've got the adaptation of Rogue One that came out as a hardcover and a paperback, and there's a comic book adaptation as well. Actually, there's 2 comic book adaptations. But there was also a tie-in novel to the film that was a prequel. It's called Catalyst, a Rogue One novel. It was released afterwards, I believe, or just around the same time, and it takes place before Rogue One does. I mean, years before. Okay. And I don't know if you read it. I have read it. I actually really, really enjoyed it. It really sets the characters in motion for Galen Erso, Krennic, the Empire's internal power struggle between things like Krennic and Tarkin and stuff like that. It's a good book. I really enjoyed it. And then there's also another book called Rebel Rising, which is about Jyn between the time that she her dad gets captured, her mother dies, and then when we see her later on, from when she gets freed from labor camp. And so you've got some other, pieces of that, early era, or that particular time frame, that obviously include, Jyn, includes other characters that are in the movie, and they're not terrible by any means. They're enjoyable. There's another book too that came out same time as Rebel Rising did, called Guardians of the Wills, which written by amazing comic book writer Greg Rucka, details the characters of Chirrut and Baze. I don't know if I'm saying their names right. Telling their backstories, prior to what happens on Jeddah, and that's also it's pretty interesting. Just again, you've got. I love when I don't know if they knew that we were going to gravitate to some of these characters and want to know more backstory and that kind of thing, but they delivered on that stuff by having it. And of course, not to take away the thunder of the lead up to what's happening, but I mean, we've got Andor, coming up, and that is also, going to be just another layered prequel to the story that we're talking about.
And I think that you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said that it's such a great time to be in this Star Wars. It's such different when you had A New Hope was your movie you had, and then you had Empire and all those. Like the original trilogy was all you had for Star Wars things. There was the fan fiction and all that stuff that had come out, but I don't know if it was right after that, but it was near then. And then, but nowadays, like I said, TV shows, comic books, audiobooks. There's kids and there's young teen stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, one of my favorite writers of all time is Charles Soule, and he's got the High Republic book that he has out and does the comic book and stuff like that. So it is cool to be this, because to be in this part, and some of it will only be in print or only in comic book form, and some will be only on TV and only in movies. But if you read the whole thing, you can get a lot of Star Wars information out there based on all the different mediums of media that are out there.
And when you're a continuity nut like me,
yes.
you know, they do a really good job, I think, of kind of keeping it together. You know, I'm sure it's, you know, for some of the creators and stuff, it can feel a little controlling at times. And we still all mourn the loss of the what's now the Legends line of stories and stuff. Even though we've seen some of those characters, you know, like Thrawn, you know, get reintroduced into the canon now. But you know, they do keep that, you know, pretty tight. And it just makes it makes a lot more fun too, because you're able to like slide these other things into it like you are now with this stuff, you know, and that it does, you know, it gives you that, I guess, you know, Star Wars buffet style of enjoyment. Like you don't like the prequel stories, you don't have to read those, you know, stories that are in that era, you know, or, you know, only like, you know, that, you know, OG, you know, New Hope kind of era, or High Republic, if that's your thing now, you know, and you know, and there's plenty of it. They keep coming out with more stuff. I mean, they just came out with a novel about the marriage of Han and Leia, which had been done before, you know, in the Legends universe years ago. But here's a new canon version of that, you know, and that's obviously a post, you know, Jedi, you know, storyline, you know, leading again into, you know, the later, you know, sequel storylines. But yeah, there's so much.
It's great to see too, because you can't always be sitting in front of a TV screen, like you just can't. And so, like, my wife and I had a few fires out in our yard over the past couple weeks, and like you could sit there and just read a book by the fire or by the lake in the summertime, and still, if you're like really into Star Wars or really into anything nowadays, has something potentially that leads up to it, or the movie was based on a book, so go read the book because it's really good too. And there were some other things. I will say that we watched Station 11, and I do think they did a better job with the TV show than they did the book. I'm sorry, I'll say that right now. But
we're in a fight. We're gonna fight.
The book was, to me, I don't know, it just feels a little bit all over the place. But like, they're both good, and I do think that they did a great job. I'm glad I got this. I do like, and actually, my wife and I were talking the other day. There's a lot of times I do pick up a book, and I look at it and I go between book A and book B, and book B has another media, like a TV show or a movie. A lot of times I'll tend to go towards that one because I do want to continue that reading or viewing. And so I'll read it, and then I want to see the TV show or movie to kind of like go, oh, in my mind, I pictured Jane Doe looking like this, but she looks like this according to the person who made the movie or the TV show. So I do have that. But yes, we can argue about that at some point. But
they're both good. I did like the television series actually a lot. So, but
and he's gonna be Werewolf by Night. What's his name? The play director, the actor. What's his name? I forget his name now, but he's gonna be the Werewolf by Night, which is pretty cool. So I think, like I said, overall, like you mentioned, you like this movie. I love this movie. This movie is a great Star Wars movie. Which Ron said it's top 3. I said top 5. It's probably more like top 4, top 3 for me as well. I just there's just so much that, you know, do you include TV shows in this now, or is it just the movies and all that stuff? There's a whole discussion on that. By the way, you mentioned the Obi-Wan Kenobi. Someone did online, and I forget the guy's name. A fan made a fan version of the Obi-Wan show where he cut it into a 2.5 hour movie, and he put it up on the internet, and he has to get to go to his website, register for his like newsletter, and he sends you a link because it's been taken down so many times. But I've heard it's really good. And so it's in 4K, and which is pretty cool. It kind of reminds me of back of the fan fiction era of Star Wars. And because I guess the original thought was it was going to move a movie like you had mentioned, and they put it into a TV show, which is, you know, I guess they could have taken it either way. I like the show.
I had heard a rumor that Disney was going to release the entirety of the series as a straight on through movie in theaters at one point. I don't know if that's something that actually happened, and like maybe not in Bangor, but in other places, or if that's something that they're still thinking about doing, which I think is really interesting. And I think when we had talked back, I think back during Solo, we were talking about that movie. We had talked about, you know, how cool it would be to see some of those television series just in the theater as well.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they'll do that. I mean, that's definitely that's a long sit through. But I mean, the people that are going to go are going to be the ones
Yeah.
that are going to sit through it, right? So, you just have to buy lots of popcorn.
Obi-Wan Kenobi Snyder cut, is that what it is?
Right. Oh no, I think that would be terrible.
Yes, it would be. But so we're getting more in this world of Star Wars, obviously, but also in the world of Rogue One with Andor, which comes out on Disney Plus. Actually, this episode is dropping September 21st, which is today. So you can listen to this and then you can go watch your Andor on Disney Plus. And they moved the date. It was supposed to be back in August. Now it's on September 21st. And they're originally we're going to do 2 episodes. You're getting 3 episodes of this, which is kind of cool. And I every time I've done this whole 3-episode thing or 2-episode thing, it's made sense to me after you watch them that you might have been let down a little bit or confused if they only put out the first episode, because some answers were given to you in second episode or third episode, which is nice. It also gives you the ability to like really get deep into it and then force yourself to watch the remaining 9 episodes. If you just watch one and it wasn't your cup of tea, you might miss the rest of it, which is pretty sad for some.
Is that what it is? It's 9 episodes. I didn't.
It's sorry, no, 12 episodes. It's
really?
3 episodes 12. And then 9 more. And the first season takes place over the span of 1 year of Cassian Andor's life, which is kind of cool. The series has been renewed for a second season already, which is awesome. And that one will take place over, what was it say? The series has already been renewed for a second season, 12 episodes. And it will conclude, that series will conclude and lead up into the events of Rogue One. So the same thing that does to A New Hope, this will do to the second season. This will do to Rogue One, which means we're probably not getting a third season. The second season, every 4 years will be every 3 episodes will be 4 years. So it's like, this is gonna be early life of Cassian Andor. And then the second season is going to go every 3 years is every 4 episodes, every 4 years. Second season will jump 4 years of Cassian's life every 3 episodes. So it's 12 years total. No. I don't know. That's like, what? I don't know. I can't do the math in my head right now. I'm hurting. It's too early in the morning. Yeah, 16 years. So we're getting a pretty good amount of.
Is he that old? I guess he doesn't.
So. But I like that. I like the time oriented, like, ahead of time, which is pretty cool. I mean, that's one of the things I loved about the show 24, is you knew it all took place in 24 hours. That's pretty cool. This is knowing that it's going to be like this. It's pretty cool. But the funny thing is, here, I don't get this. I don't get the whole timeline thing, because it says here the description of the show is beginning 5 years before the events of Star Wars spinoff Rogue One. So if the season 1 happens 5 years ahead of time, how does 4 years every 3 episodes happen if that's the second season? So I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out. We'll find out.
The series follows an ensemble cast of characters during the time that the Rebel Alliance is forming in opposition of the Galactic Empire. One of these characters is Cassian Andor, a thief who becomes a revolutionary and eventually joins the rebellion. So this movie, the show was created by Tony Gilroy, was one of the 17 people who wrote Rogue One, because that had like a group of writers on that. But so that's pretty cool. I like Diego Luna. I'm excited for that. He'll also executive produce and reprise his role as Cassian Andor. Stellan Skarsgård is in it too.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Fiona Shaw, Genevieve O'Reilly, Adrian Arano, is that where I work? Arana. Denise Gao, Kyler Solar will also star. And then obviously, like we mentioned earlier, Forrest Whitaker will reprise his role as Saul Guerrera. And then Robert Ems and David Heyman have been cast in undisclosed supporting roles. I love those. Undisclosed. They don't know who they are.
I loved Cassian Andor's character in Rogue One, and I'm really excited that we're going to get more of that. Layered into some of the trailers for this is some sound bites from him in Rogue One, where he's talking about the people that end up joining the crew at the end of the movie. We're all assassins and spies, and but we all believe in this, and I love that sort of element, because there is that that early rebellion type feel that you're seeing in the trailers for this, where it does feel super early, for some kind of resistance to actually happening. And the boots on the ground aspect of the people that are just caught in all of this. You see that, but there's so many other elements I'm seeing in the trailers for this. Where you've got shots of the Galactic Senate, you've got Coruscant and everywhere else, and it's like, okay, all right, we're gonna get a real, I think, fleshed out, multi-point of view about what is happening at this time.
Yeah.
That you're really seeing, outside of Bail Organa and Mon Mothma and whoever else we've always sort of known are the progenitors of starting the rebellion or whatever. You're seeing the other people that get attached to it and why. Because obviously the Empire sucks ass.
Yes.
So let's but we got to fight the power.
Yes.
And that's great. I'm very excited for it.
And I think the most successful things they've done so far in the Star Wars universe since the original trilogy has been focusing on the slightly more unknown characters. Or like Mandalorian was unbelievable, and it's like most fringe people don't know what a Mandalore was or Mandalorian was or anything like that. And so obviously it had something to do with this guy over here, little baby Yoda, but they did a great job with that was definitely made well more successful than Boba Fett, and we all loved Boba Fett. Everybody loves Boba Fett, and that show was still made better than that one. Obi-Wan was good, and I liked it, but again, I still think the first season of Mandalorian is the best Star Wars TV show that's come out so far, live action one. And then this one, I think. Oh yeah, exactly right. Oh. I was gonna say we're not going to get into that, but we are going to get into that at some point in the future here. But that Cassian Andor was a main character in Rogue One, but like he's not your Obi-Wan or your Luke or your Leia or your Darth Vader's. He's this character that you see in a movie that was created. Again, Rogue One would be this situation that there is Darth Vader in this movie and people that you know, but it was basically on Rogue One, a unknown movie. And I think that's why that movie was so much more successful than Solo, because people didn't like the fact that someone else was playing Harrison Ford's character, which is stupid because obviously, unless you want CGI the entire time, he can't play young, can't play young Han Solo. But Rogue One and The Mandalorian are those two films or TV shows that were based on people that were in the universe that aren't really your known characters, and it was super successful. So I think with this Andor thing spinning out of it, it's like, okay, we're going to be able to see a TV show. We're going to know some people, Cassian Andor, but we're going to be able to see this character. You're going to be able to see a little bit more of what's going on without having to throw Luke Skywalker in there and Darth Vader and all that stuff in there, which is pretty cool. So we're probably going to see some characters, like I said, that we all know. We've seen some in trailers and things like that. But the idea that I can now watch fresh, like my wife can watch it and not have to know the entire history of Star Wars to be able to get it. I can say this is before Rogue One. She's like, cool, we'll do that. And then we'll probably watch Rogue One again afterwards, after the second season. I think I'm gonna wait. I've watched Rogue One 3 times in the past 6 months. So I think I'll wait a little while for that. But yeah, I like that true spinoff of things, not what they've done. They've ruined some, not ruined, but like the Boba Fett one was a true spinoff, but it was still a character that we all know. And even though he didn't have many parts in the Star Wars movies, we just really knew about Boba Fett. I don't really know much about Cassian Andor besides what happens in Rogue One. Yeah.
And the budget for this looks like it must be incredible too. I haven't looked up any kind of numbers that have been released about it, but it looks very high budget. And I know that they've put a lot of money into these shows because that's what they're doing. They're doing the shows. So, but it seems to, have a lot more locations, a lot more, storylines sort of, culminating together than some of these other shows have had, like Kenobi and Mandalorian. And I think that's probably really raising what their budget is on this. Yeah. And, going back to Rogue One about their budget and that being one of the more expensive movies made at the time, they also, in addition to doing the CGI stuff on those characters we talked about before, they had found footage, I guess, also from New Hope that had been cut of the different, X-Wing squadron leaders and things like that. And so they've reused some of that material to, when they're doing their call signs and stuff like that, which is great. And I wonder if there will be anything like that they'll sort of bring into this show as well. Some found footage that they were able to put in, because I think I love that element of it, because again that it has that feel, that found footage would have that feel of that time frame of movie making, right? So I think that's pretty neat too. So we'll see. I'm really I'll be watching for the Easter eggs, and
Yes.
I'll be watching a couple times, so just look for different things.
It's very exciting, and it actually is. It's technically one of the first, because I don't know, Obi-Wan Kenobi, I don't know if it did or not, but it didn't use the stagecraft. They did more on location, outdoor like shots, whereas Mandalorian, Boba Fett, and some of these other TV shows and movies that have come up recently, they've used that stagecraft technology with the digital background instead of the green screen. And this one actually doesn't use a lot of that. It doesn't actually use any of it in this one. So there's a lot more on set, on location filming. They did a lot of it in London and things like that. But like, it's really cool to see that again, the whole idea that just because you can doesn't mean you have to. And I think that's really cool in changing things up. And it's obviously was a decision, maybe the higher ups or the director, creator, Tony Gilroy. Maybe he just was like, no, I want to do it this way. But it's pretty cool to know that there's still people doing the old fashioned way. Like I said, it's great. Mandalorian was unbelievable with that stuff. Like, it's really cool to see that you kind of believe that he's actually on set, on location, I should say. But it's also cool to see people go back to the roots and say, nope, we're going to do some on location filming because that's what we want to do. And that's a feel we want to get for it, which was they did in the original movies. They're not, they're on location for a lot of those outdoor scenes, right?
Yeah. I'm also wondering how much we'll feel a sense of modern day politics sort of entering into it. I mean, there's this, from the trailer, you get this, backstory for Andor's character as a child. He's sort of a migrant, person who, they don't want them where they are, and that kind of thing. And then how they latch on to something that they'll fight for, a belief or a country or a planet, or, whatever it is. Obviously, temperaments being what they've been, the past several years, with everything from, the border and things like that, and immigrants, seeing how that, if there's any statements sort of being made, whether, right over the head or just, cleverly put through in there, just to make it feel relevant,
yes. And I like that.
Interesting thing with Star Wars.
I understand that because I feel like you can relate to it a little bit more if you do things like that. Like when Iron Man, to reference Marvel again and Iron Man again, when that movie came out and they changed slightly the origin story of Tony Stark and Iron Man from the comic books to the point where you made it in modern day Middle East, where like we knew what was going on in the world, and it made more sense because it was relevant to real world things. Even though it's fake, it still made it feel more realistic by doing that. And so having some modern themes in those kind of things, and why I think that the X-Men, when that comes out eventually, and the mutants thing is going to be good, because there is going to be this whole social thing about it and political thing about it, which is great because again, it makes you look outside the world and see what's going on in your own backyard too.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned X-Men. I'm very anxious. X-Men has always been my favorite Marvel comic. So, I mean, and I latched onto it from, being a young, preteen, and being like, the outsiders, of everything else, and mutants, and now we've got, a very significant thread in the real world about identity and, a lot of other things like that. And seeing what that correlation will be when they finally come out with an X-Men movie, I think will be really interesting. And I hope that they can, make it as relevant and everything as it needs to be.
As it needs to be, correct. And I think that's what they were creating in the first place. So I feel like if they pay enough attention to the original source material, they'll do fine with it. But with this, finishing up on Rogue One. Rogue One's great. Everybody should see it. And I do believe that there's other ways. There's so many different ways to watch the Star Wars movies. But to me, as I've gotten in this, even if you like to do the, way the movies came out, I still tell people that it's actually kind of a cool idea to slide this one in before you watch A New Hope. So you go in there, watch this one, then you can watch the rest of them in the order they were released if you want. But I kind of like the idea that you get an idea what they're talking about in the scroll. And when they talk about, a lot of people lost their lives to get this these maps and these plans. It's pretty cool to see that ahead of time. But watch the way you want to watch it, because that's the cool thing about these movies. You can watch them however you want to watch them. No one's telling you have to watch them a certain way, which is really cool. And then maybe you start the whole thing off with watching Andor. No, you're gonna watch Rogue One, the first trilogy, and then Andor to get the prequel to the prequel to the prequel.
So many prequels.
It's getting, I honestly don't understand. Like, a lot of us who grew up with this and knew this and all this stuff, to the young mind getting into it, they're probably like, now that there's all this TV shows and things like that, they're like, what the hell's wrong with people? Don't they know timelines? Like, right. But it's George Lucas.
Maybe we should record a prequel podcast to this podcast where we're talking about how we're going to have this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But yeah, so briarpatchbooks.com. What's the website?
briarpatchbooks.com.
That's so. See, I thought I was right about that. briarpatchbooks.com. And if you're in the Bangor area, you can visit him in downtown Bangor on Central Street in downtown Bangor, right next to Get a Bagel, and go over there, or go see him, buy a book, then go over and read your book and eat a bagel. And if you're, downtown Bangor, see the other places that are down there as well. Sometimes I run into Gibran at Galactic Comics and Collectibles in Bangor because we're buying comic books or whatever. We got Comic-Con coming up here in Bangor, pretty sweet. Excited for that. A bunch of cool guests and things that got going on there. I designed a can for Marsh Island Brewing Company's beer to come out for it's called We All Float, in reference to the It movies that the Loser Club is going to be at, which is pretty cool. So if you're in the greater Bangor area, again, if you're in New Hampshire, in Massachusetts, drive up. This Comic-Con is going to be pretty fun. It's worth it. It's at the Cross Insurance Center in Bangor, bangorcomic@toycon.com for that. I don't know if you're going to head over there at all on that weekend to say hi, but if not, we'll see you there. If not, I'll probably run into you at some point. I told my wife last night, I still have a book on hold at Briar Patch. Yeah, back there. It's probably. I'm probably now going to have to add books to it when I talk about these prequel books that you just mentioned today. But I'll have to bring my son in sometime. He is obsessed with books right now, which is awesome. Yeah. And so he'll probably be like, "What is going on in here?" There's so many books, but yeah. So Rogue One, watch it. Andor hits streaming when this episode drops on Disney Plus for the first 3 episodes, and then Gibran will be back soon to talk more about other nerdy things and to make it so that I have a guest co-host on here.
Anytime.
Thanks a lot for joining me, man, and enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you soon.
May the force be with you.
And with you.